Wednesday. Today I'm super excited to do this really special IG Live event with three amazing advocates and also creators in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community because this month, the month of May, is the AAPI Heritage Month. And if you're following the news, whether you're in the community or not, you may have heard news reports and a lot of incidents about the really dramatic rise in both violent attacks and also more explicit discrimination against the members of the community. So it is disheartening to see, and we're doing this. And one is that I am Asian American. I'm a first-gen immigrant, which we'll kind of go into that a little bit more. And we'll also talk about, so what's next? Now that we've talked about some of the issues that we face, so what is next? How do we build better allyship, or how do we get more communities involved and build solidarity? So these are some open, honest, and candid discussions we'll have today. So I'm super excited, and hi everybody for joining. And I think we have two of the panelists already here, so I'm going to go live with a few. All right, so let me see how we do this. All right. Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Brooke.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Karina. Hi, Gwen.
Hello.
How are you?
How's it going?
Good,
Sorry.
good.
I feel like I'm
Wednesday.
talking over all of you. This is so disorienting.
Oh, don't worry. This is yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, Gwen. Your image was a little bit lagging. Karina, I'm not sure if that's the
It's
case
a
for you as
lagging.
well. Okay, so just to give you a heads up that your internet is breaking up a little bit. Hi, everybody, for joining.
Thanks for having us, Minette.
Yeah, no, of course. Oh, hey, Lauren. Hello, Nick. We have a lot of new members here. Thank you so much for joining us. And so before we get started, we have we have three amazing panelists here. Oh, I think Gwen just hopped off to make sure we have really good internet here. And hey, Lauren, so I'm going to add you to the live. Awesome. So we'll all get situated. But yes, so hello, hey,
Hi,
Lauren.
Lauren. Your hair's
Hey, did
fantastic.
I kick someone out?
No,
No, you didn't.
Oh, I was like, oh my gosh. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. I was trying to get my AirPods together
you're great.
over
Nope,
here.
no problem. Yes, your hair looks amazing.
Thank you. Just got my shot, so doing okay so far.
Nice.
Amazing, congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. And this is a very special event. I'm so psyched about this, and I was looking forward to this the whole week. And I know that Gwen just popped out to get better internet, and then she will come back in, and I'll add her back in. So this is a pretty special event, and we have three amazing and kick-ass AAPI ladies, and then we'll talk about really a lot of things. We'll touch on issues that we have faced growing up as an Asian American and Pacific Islander in the U.S. This will be an open and candid discussion. I will get pretty personal, and honestly, I haven't talked about any of the things, even with some of my closest friends, just because
Ooh.
how personal some of these things are. And aside from that, though, we'll talk about so what's the path forward, right? Now that we know the issues, how people from both within and outside the community can really build allyship with us, and then how do we make our voices heard? So this should be a pretty good discussion, and thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, I'm going to start with the intros, and I have just added Gwen back in. Hello.
Hi, sorry, take two. I took it off of the internet. That's awkward and embarrassing. Hi, everyone.
No,
Hello
hello. No, I'm
again.
glad that you can make it.
Yeah,
now we
thanks for
have
having us.
a full house.
Yay!
Awesome. Okay, so we'll get started. And so first of all, I'll do some intros. And for those who are tuning in, hello. For those who are tuning in, this will be a super casual conversation. I know we're doing this virtually, but just kind of imagine that we're in a group together. And so, react with emojis, thumbs up, or I don't know, heart, or whatever you feel like. And then leave comments as we speak, and then chime in with questions. Don't worry about interrupting our conversation. Just add in your questions, and then we'll get to those that fit within conversation. If they don't, we have a Q&A session at the end. But this is not a webinar. We're not doing a Zoom webinar. So just want to make it clear. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah,
I've
please,
done
please
enough Zoom
engage,
webinar.
guys.
I'm over it. Yeah. But yeah, so let's get started. For those who don't know me, my name is Minette Yu. I go by Min in my non-professional life, and Karina and I actually met in Harvard in our undergrad. So I'm super excited to really pull people from different walks of my own life. So it's super exciting. And I'm the founder and CEO of StoreyLine. It's really a culmination of my own personal passion and my professional experience. And I'm very passionate about supporting and empowering underrepresented consumer entrepreneurs and to make it frictionless for shoppers to really vote with their wallet. And we have amazing panelists today. So I'll introduce Lauren first. And so Lauren is the creator of the Lions and the Thrive and Thread, which is a really cool podcast and blogging site. She's an inner work coach, choreographer. I know that Lauren, you do a ton of dances. I always follow your dance and brighten my day up. And you're a well-being educator. So super cool.
Thank you.
And we have Gwen. Gwen's a fashion model, film, and TV actor. And Gwen, your goal is to increase AAPI representation in the entertainment industry, which is so needed. We still see very few Asian and Asian American lead in entertainment. So I'm super excited to delve into that later. And of course, we have Karina. Like I mentioned earlier, Karina and I went way back to college. And Karina, you are a poet. And you're a happiness coach, and you're an entrepreneur who's launched many ventures. And I bought your book last year, and I've been reading the poems, which got me through the ups and downs of the isolation and the pandemic days. So I'm super excited. You're also very vocal and a strong advocate for the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. So you're doing so much advocacy work, and just so excited that all three of you can join me today and I have just realized all of us are very creative in one sense. Like we come from very different parts of kind of the industry with, dances, with coaching, with film, with poetry. Super cool. So with that, we'll go into the actual meat of the conversation. First of all, how has being an Asian American shaped your identity growing up? And then second part of the question is, how has that affected your career choices? So Gwen, I'll go with you first.
Okay. So I think that that's a loaded question, obviously, but
yes.
So I grew up in Arizona, which is, as many of you know, still a pretty red state. It's a little bit more purple now, but growing up, it wasn't as diverse. So that also affected my experience as an Asian American. I feel that being an Asian American, specifically in Arizona, is sort of a sense of like cultural displacement. You're neither here nor there. You're kind of straddling the lines. And when I was younger, I found that really difficult because, of course, we all just want to fit in and we all want to find a place that we belong. And that's when I really started turning to art and media. I don't know if you guys know this, but English isn't my first language. Mandarin is. So I didn't learn how to speak English until I was about like 5. And the way that I learned English was not only through class, but through like watching TV and reading magazines and all those sorts of things. But I didn't really see myself represented. And I felt like another sense of displacement in that regard. And so I knew that when I grew up, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be. At first, I thought I wanted to be a writer. So I was a poet also for a little bit.
Hey!
What? That's so cool.
Yeah,
Love
and
it.
then it kind of transitioned more gradually and naturally into what I enjoy doing, which is, telling stories, but more physically. I hope that answered the question.
For sure. There's so much, so many good. I didn't know that you were born. Well, not born. Sorry, you grew up in Arizona, and
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it will turn purple. We'll see. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I didn't know you wrote poems. Maybe you should share some of them with us if you're comfortable.
I'm actually working on an anthology, but
Amazing.
to be
Dope.
determined.
That's
So awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And Karina, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Oakland, California. And similar to Gwen, I'm from a Chinese American family. And Mandarin is actually also my first language. And I didn't speak
Hey.
it yeah, until 5. And in preschool, my parents switched me over to English because I couldn't communicate with any other preschoolers there, and I was really lonely. So that's when they switched me over to English. And I think I didn't notice race until 3rd grade. I remember there was one day where I woke up and realized that we have different color skin. And I was like, whoa, okay, this person is white, and apparently I'm yellow, and that is apparently different. And there was this like social contract that was created in my head that I had no idea before that day. So it was just really visceral for me. And knowing that, okay, this is something that's created by society, and somehow I am Asian and I'm going to be put in this bucket by people. And at the time, just like one example, some of my friends would joke about some of the foods I had. If you're Chinese or know of like roll song, it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
floss or like fried pork or something. And I had that at lunch one time, and my friends were like, "Oh, you're eating monkey hair," and like certain things about our
Aw.
culture.
I
Which,
did ask got the same comment. It's funny now, but like it's so like uncomfy then. Sorry.
right,
Yeah.
So growing up, it was sometimes like grappling with my Asian American identity and feeling like I neither belong in America or in China. Because if I went back and visited relatives there, I felt like a foreigner. They're like, "You're not Chinese." But in here, people are like, "Oh, where are you from? You're not American." So I felt like I didn't fit in either place, and I didn't know where I belonged. And so over time, I've been figuring out how I do belong and trying to connect with other Asian Americans, knowing that we are American, that we celebrate our culture, and that we all belong. And that's something I'm really passionate about, helping others really know that.
Yeah, I also resonate with that on so many levels. Thank you for sharing. And I remember the pork floss incident for sure. Hey, Lauren, we'll come to you. What's your
Yeah.
experience like?
Everything she just said really resonated with me, and that is just such beautiful insight to hear others' experiences because I feel like we have not talked about this idea of not feeling like we belong.
Hmm.
I would have never guessed that. I mean, that's going to sound kind of ignorant, but to someone who's a full Asian, right? Because I'm mixed Asian. I don't know. Is everyone here full, or is anyone in here mixed as
I'm like a hybrid of Asian countries, but
Yeah,
I'm
for
Asian.
sure.
okay?
Yeah. But
Okay.
Asian, yeah.
A lot of Asian in there. Yeah. So I don't even like to do the percentages anymore, but for context, my dad's full Filipino with some Chinese. My mom is half Filipino, half white, Polish
Mhm.
to be exact. Um, and so even the question of what does it mean to be an Asian American, I don't really have an answer for that. Um, in the rise of like the AAPI hate crimes and things that were going on. And I started doing a lot of inner work and healing around being a mixed woman, being a mixed race Asian American, because I kind of, up until this year, I kind of forgot that I was mixed.
Yeah.
And then I also didn't identify as like the true Filipino or like full Filipino. I was born in San Diego. I was raised here in Virginia. I don't speak another language, unfortunately. Kind of pissed about that they didn't teach me, but you know, to each their own, right? It's like one of those things where it's like the people that did grow up learning the language wish they knew English first, and then vice versa. It's like people with straight hair want curly hair. You're like never happy with what we get, right? But being an Asian American, I'm in a season of just understanding that I'm Lauren De Vera. I am not the Filipino American that most people want to box me into. I am not full Asian, and I'm stepping more into I get to decide what my culture is. And that has taken so many years of pain. And I'm not saying that I've healed from it all, but I have sought out healing. I am shifting what I'm reading. I'm reading about other people's experiences, and even having conversations like this and hearing from you that y'all have felt like you don't belong in the States. And then I go to the Philippines and I'm like put on a pedestal because I'm light skinned. But here in the States, I want to be dark skinned. And then the whole thing of like going to family parties and they're speaking in Tagalog and I don't know what the hell they're saying. But, you know, how am I supposed to ever feel like a part of this family if you're speaking in another language? So I'm kind of going on a tangent. But to answer the second question of like, how has this affected my career path? It hasn't. I am blessed to say that I have Asian parents that supported my desire to do what I wanted to do. I did not have that Asian parent that wanted me to be a nurse or a doctor. Would they have enjoyed that? Absolutely. But I was never forced to go to school for a certain thing. I was never forced to study something I didn't want to. And I think there's just a lot of stubbornness within me, right? I just kind of like, I put my foot down, I'm going to go for what I want. And while that's something I'm proud of, I recognize that might be my trauma response to things that have happened in the past. So my mom is on here. Hi, Crab Lady 70. That's my mom. Shout out to Mom for putting me in dance classes and teaching me about my faith. But to tie this first question, I don't operate under the idea or the concept of being Asian American. And sometimes I forget that I'm Asian, or I forget that I'm part white. I forget like what I look like to other people. And I'm sure y'all can resonate with that 100%. Too. It's just like, we're just living our life and we just happen to have this skin color and look like this. So yeah. That's my answer.
that's awesome. And Laura, I didn't know about that piece. So thank you about your mixed heritage. That is. And hi, Lauren's mom, Crab Lady 70.
She's a Cancer. That's why she put the crab in there.
Oh, I was gonna ask if it was like a food thing or like.
It might be. We're both Cancer and we love crab legs. So I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, thanks for joining us. And it's so amazing to hear that. You know, Laura, you're able to really grow up in a supportive family, pursue whatever career path, and that is amazing. Just wanted to chime in here a little bit about my own experience, and of course, Karina and Gwen. I think that sounds like a lot of like three of us are, you know, more of a first generation immigrant / English is not our first language. I came to the U.S. in high school, so 14 years old. And luckily I was in Southern California where there's a little bit more people, I think, who look like me instead of Arizona. But at the same time, I think feeling different is a bit more pronounced once I landed in Harvard and also after in Boston, where there are a lot fewer Asians and Asian Americans. And this actually leads to the second question, which is,
have you personally experienced any discrimination or racism? I mean, Karina, Gwen, you mentioned about the pork floss, which is, I mean, from, of course, when we're looking at it now, it's like maybe it's a trivial, like maybe they don't mean it, kids were mean back in the days, but it is something that we would feel hurt by, right? And something extremely uncomfortable with. And so for me, I also experienced some of that, but I think at that time, I would choose to look the other way, as in that I will always give excuses, as in, oh, like they didn't mean it, or oh, meant well. Maybe I'm over exaggerating. But the thing is, as I was really reflecting back on some of these instances, I just remembered so well. And I was asking myself, why do I remember the details so vividly? And I think it's because it was deeply hurtful. So something as fleeting as a comment from a boss, as a CEO I looked up to in my first job, who caught a grammatical error I made and said, hey, you people always make this kind of mistakes. And
Not that.
right, so I actually remember that detail really well, and I only probably a month ago shared that with my husband when we started talking about these kind of things. And I don't know, I just felt so hurt after all those years. So some questions for you, like, have you personally felt, like, did you personally experience any discrimination or remarks and that are deeply hurtful? Either, I don't know, whoever wants to jump in or feel comfortable with sharing that.
I feel like personally, I haven't been. The discrimination I've seen has actually mainly been towards my family and not me. For whatever reason, I think I grew up and my parents, right off the bat, were like, we're going to make sure you do not have an accent. It is going to be undeniable that you're 100% American and you're going to be very well spoken. And that was just day one. Like, I would come home from school. I'm talking like first, second grade, and I would sit down to these like English textbooks and we'd write out sentences. So I was like literally reading the dictionary at like a first grade level and in advanced reading by the time I was in second grade. But the reason why they did that was because my parents both have very heavy accents. My dad has a PhD and my mom is like a like computer science graduate. And whenever they would call for like really basic things, so for instance, I'll give you an example. So one time I remember distinctly when we were younger, they were calling to get something fixed with the plumbing. And they had really thick accent. And the person on the other end of the phone just kept saying, I can't understand you. And denying them service. And it happened more times than I can count, to the point where they would actually have me get on the phone sometimes, or my sister get on the phone sometimes. And that was a really heavy level of discrimination that I saw like right off the bat. And this is going to sound weird, but I really do resonate with Lauren because I don't think about my race on a daily basis. I don't really resonate with Asian culture, mostly because I grew up in America and I am kind of a conglomeration of cultures, right? And so for me, it's not really necessarily been as difficult as it has been for people in my life. But that almost hurts more because I think that there's something really distinctly painful about watching people you love like go through something difficult and not being able to help. And so, yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, for sure. No, thanks for sharing that. And I think that kind of experience also make us kind of grow up faster. The fact that you had to deal with a lot of those issues when you were little, right? That your parents are kind of relying on you so that they don't get discriminated against. That's heartbreaking. But at the same time, I also resonate with you and also Lauren, the fact that there is this very tricky line where like where do we belong exactly? Of course, like I also don't think about my race or ethnicity on a daily basis. It's one of those like underlying or undercurrent thing where we kind of forget about that until something happens. At least that's the case for me.
Definitely,
That
definitely that.
yeah, that
Yeah.
I'm usually the minority in whatever group. I come from tech, and also the schools that I went to or the community that I'm in. Typically, there's really not another face that looks like myself. So kind of used to being that in the minority position. And usually it works okay and felt that I would belong or blend in until something happens. And usually it's those moments that I remind myself that, oh, okay, like not everyone thinks that I belong. And yeah, Karina, what about you?
Yeah, I've had several incidents of discrimination. I have two which are like very present for me, very salient. One is I was walking on a street and this guy comes up to me and is like, "So when you smile, how do you not walk into poles?" And I was so angry,
Oh
but
my
I
God,
was just
what?
like, right? I was like, "Who are you? Why are you telling me this?" And like, if you're trying to hit on me, this does not work. But like,
No.
also
The
like
audacity.
right. And like,
Holy.
so so yeah, that happened to me, and that made me conscious, like extra conscious of my eyes. Yes, I know when I smile, they like are small and Asian, and they like crinkle, but you do not need to come up to me and ask that. That just is not helpful. And the other
Wow.
was I was a server one summer in college because I thought I was going to open my own cafe. So I was a server at this restaurant, and this guy, he's maybe 60, 70 years old, and he's white. He asked me like, "Oh, how long have you been here?" And I'd been working at the restaurant for 7 weeks, so I was like, "Oh, 7 weeks." And he says, "Your English is so good." And I was like, actually, sorry, I'm like born here. I meant at the restaurant." And he was like, "Oh, but then after he was like, 'Oh, well, all you Orientals are the same.'" And I was like gasped that he's saying this. And then I was like trying to get myself out of there as fast as possible so I would not say something I regretted. And so I was like, "Thank you, sir." And then I like gave him a handshake, and he was like, "Oh, in America, we give firm handshakes." And then he like takes my hand and like squeezes it, and it's like this. And I was ready to just like go off and be like, "I went to Harvard. I studied psychology. probably know more English than you do." All this, I
Oh
did
my
not
God.
say any of that, but it was that was pretty infuriating, and just that people have to experience things like that.
I'm sorry that you had to go through those things.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's terrible, and I totally hear you on those instances. It's usually like, "Oh, your English so good," or like, where are you from? Right, the classic,
Right.
the
Oh,
classic
that
questions.
one.
What you two were
Yeah.
talking about before about going outside, like usually on a day-to-day basis, I'm not aware of my skin. I'm just like me. But then once I walk out the door, because of the violence against Asians recently, I am so aware of my skin color and that I have to be on guard, unfortunately on guard no matter where I am. And so I will put my phone away and just like have my hands ready and just like be prepared. And it's a different level of awareness, I think.
Wow, and of course, Oakland and San Francisco have been unfortunately, the hotbed for violent attacks, even though Oakland is this kind of beacon also for, diversity. Of course, the Chinese population, Asian population has a long history of both immigrating and settling there. So to see, those kind of attacks happening in broad daylight kind of really sends a chill down our spines. Yeah, and we should never feel unsafe walking around neighborhoods. That's just unacceptable. Lauren, what about you? Do you have any instances that you recall?
Yeah, I think I think I want to like just take a moment and acknowledge that like what we're sharing is pretty traumatic. Like, I
Mhm.
want to acknowledge that everyone here is able to be so eloquent in the delivery of this experience, but to also notice I'm like, what I feel in my body is like heat, anger. Like I feel it in my chest. I feel it in my back. I feel it in my arms. Um, I could probably cry. I'm going to try not to cry, but
It's okay if
because
you do. We
like,
got you,
I
girl.
It's fine.
think I've been so emotional like these past 24 hours. I was like, oh God, I hope I don't cry on this IG live. But you know,
Don't worry.
I think just as a, so I'm a coach, and as a coach, you know, we're here, the way we listen has just shifted ever since I became a coach, right? The way we listen is
Mhm.
different. As a podcast host, the way that I listen is different. And before I even like give an answer, I want us to acknowledge how exhausting it has been for all of us, because even though it may not be explicitly to ourselves, but you're in the position where you're witnessing it, or like for me, like fearing my dad, you know, taking the bus in Fairfax, Virginia, you know,
Mhm.
which is a pretty good city, but him
Mm-hmm.
being old and Asian, and I know how long it takes him to
Yeah.
get up from the chair, and like just having those scary ass thoughts. I just want to acknowledge that even though our trauma is not the same as other people's, we should not discredit it. Um, and we should not discredit that just because we don't feel and walk around like we're Asian, that we're not carrying the trauma from our ancestors.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I'm sorry to make this conversation so deep, but it's like we're
No,
talking
I mean it
about
should
No,
race
this is
be.
what we
here.
want.
Yeah,
We
It's
want
a
yeah,
that.
yeah.
we're talking about race here, and I feel heat and rage in my body. Um, just it just pisses me off so much,
Yeah.
and it's so important that these conversations are happening more. Like, I know it's also mental health awareness month, right? So there's a
Yes.
lot of
Mm-hmm.
things going on about like, oh, what not to say to someone who has a mental health disorder. Okay, well, let's talk about what not to say to someone who's Asian, what not to say to someone who's mixed Asian, what not to say to someone who's a person of color right now in this season.
Yes.
Um, and what I see here and what I witness here is four incredible women who have busted their ass, who have studied till they were crying in the wee hours of the night, right? Sweating, everything we could possibly do to be a success in America, and yet it's still not enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's still not enough. And so to come back to the question of the racism question, have I experienced that? I'm sure I have. And I probably deemed it as normal. That's
Yes.
my awareness.
Mm.
Is there's probably been many instances where I have experienced racism, as I'm pretty sure 90% of my bosses were all white women, white men, and as Asian, just still feeling invisible, right? So we keep the peace, we don't make noise, we work hard, we do the right things, so we don't make noise. And after so many years of suppressing that, and now finally something has happened where we can voice that. It pisses me off that it took this for us to even
Right.
have a platform to be seen,
Yes.
to have a platform to be heard. Like, okay, like I'm in my early 30s. Like this would have been nice 10 years ago, you know?
Right.
Like I look at my 20s and how hard that was for me, not recognizing the multiple layers that were working against me, that no one talks about, because we just talk about get good grades, go to a good school, get a good job, have a nice resume, and life will be easier for you. And it's not that simple.
No.
It's not that simple. So right now, as I'm hearing your experiences, it pisses me off. And I just met the two of you today, and I want to freaking hug you
I know.
and
Same.
tell you to
Hugs to
like
all of us.
to rest, right? Like take a day off, rest. Like let's not push so hard for some time. Let's let ourselves off the hook of needing to do more, because we've been doing so damn much more than the average person in this country. Um, and yeah, I am riled up right now, but I think as far as a racist thing, I mean, when we were kids, they made fun of my nose because, it's a little flatter right here. And I used to hate my nose, and no shade to my dad, because, parents be doing weird shit, would take his hands and like try to make it more
Oh,
American
that's how,
and
yeah.
would, yeah,
Yeah, that.
all the time.
Oh,
Like he just kept going like this, like trying to, and I would like try to make it. I don't think I've shared this with anyone. I've never shared this with anyone. But yeah, it would always go like this, trying to make it more pronounced. And um what else? I'm trying to think in the workplace. I mean, the whole like fetishing is a whole different topic. I don't know if we want to go there, but I think we've all
I mean,
experienced that.
very
Yes.
much that.
Yeah. Woo!
whoa. Take a deep breath.
Sorry.
We'll do. There's also Mental Health Day.
Can I just
Yes.
add one thing onto that?
Of course.
So I feel on almost the opposite side of that spectrum, to the point where I am so afraid of how angry I would be if I really just sat and thought about everything. So I've almost suppressed it to the point where I'm just kind of like numb to it now. I'm desensitized, I guess is a good word.
Yep.
The same way that we are desensitized to gun violence now because it is so prevalent. But I will say that something that has become more and more apparent to me is that, well, one, I agree with the comments. This is very much an educational issue. We need to address these things in schools. We need to be talking. We need to be providing a larger understanding of what cultures are rather than our impressions of what they may be. And for me, what I've really taken it upon myself to do is to channel all of that rage and that frustration into making sure that other people do not feel that way. So I've made it such a big part of my life's mission to make people feel included, to make them feel loved, and to make... I posted about this yesterday, but I think that, a lot of times we feel like we're outsiders, right? Especially in this day and age. And if you're any kind of a person of color, you feel very ostracized at times. And I know you don't want to hear this, but it is also a good thing, because it is that discomfort that pushes you to make change, to grow. And it has probably made you this amazing creative person that you are.
Yeah.
Because you have to think differently. Mm-hmm. And so I also want to take a moment to say that, like, if you are one of those people that feels discouraged right now, you feel like an outsider, I want you to know that I hear you, I see you, but what you are doing is so important. Yes. I don't care if it's something as small as tending store or whatever it may be. Your presence matters, and make sure you take the time to acknowledge your own experience. And yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's so well said.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah.
I do want to add, though, that because of this, we are so quick to be the caregiver. We are so quick to rally people together. And I recognize that within myself when the AAPI stuff, the shooting in Atlanta, the stuff in New York, and I was like, all right, we're going to take action. We're going to hold a healing circle. Yes. But then I also questioned myself, Lauren, have you sat still long enough to process what's going on before you take care of other people? And so in that healing circle, I asked every single person in that room, what do you need? What do you actually need?
Yeah.
Because here we are collectively thinking about the community already off bat. What can I do for the community? How can I take care of my clients? How can I take care of the people in my spaces without slowing down long enough to actually be like, what do I need?
Mm-hmm.
And so while this pain has manifested into our purpose, which I'm a firm believer, right? The story of not belonging is like my deepest ass wound. And I didn't ever once correlate it to being Asian. I never correlated it to being a mixed person. I initially felt that when I was born into a blended family, having siblings 15 to 20 years older than me.
Wow.
And so it's like, oh, Lauren's like the youngest, but then it's like a 15, 20-year age difference, and I don't speak Tagalog. How do I find my way in this? And now that this has erupted and there's more education, more people are writing about their experiences, it's like, holy shiza, what I'm feeling is not just that one incident in my childhood, it's an entire generation, many, many,
Yeah.
many thousands of years back, or hundreds of years back. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that. I
No,
wanted to
I
add that.
definitely agree. I definitely agree. Um, I think that it's important to take that time to process. And that's something I try to work on. I'm not very good at processing things, mostly just because I don't necessarily feel like I have the space to do it right now in the grand scheme of things. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but it's kind of this sense of like, I have to keep going and I have to keep doing XYZ because who's going to take care of me? And being like in my 20s and living alone in New York City and my family's across the country, that's kind of been my way of processing. But I definitely agree with you. I think that like we all need to be taking time also for ourselves to be like, how can I hold space for myself today?
Yeah, one of the things I do, I have the same issue as you, like wanting to just jump in and take care of others, is I will create like self-love time or like a date with myself where
Oh,
I
that's
block
really
out an
cute.
hour or two. Just because I am similar to you, I will always have things I need to get done and feel that pressure, but I force myself to do like create this time for me to really feel everything and process. Otherwise, it's just pent up in me and gets numb, and then it gets like it builds up over time and will
Yeah.
explode. So I've like started doing this, and after Lauren, you brought up after the Atlanta shootings, I like felt numb, felt helpless, felt everything, and cried for several days, and allowed myself to really feel it. And I asked my parents, like, "How are you doing? Or like, you heard the news? Are you feeling okay?" And it hadn't hit them yet. It hit them 3, 4 days later, but I was like at the forefront of it because I allowed it to actually like flow through me, and it was so much to feel. But I was like, I need to feel all of this so that I can heal and like then help people.
Yep. Absolutely. Love that.
That's awesome. And wow, thank you so much for sharing. And I know that I'm learning a ton from just hearing you, and I know that the audience is too. Thank you to those who are leaving comments and kind of jumping in here. I am reading through your comments. Thank you so much for your support. And yes, it is not the easiest to talk about some of these things. And I know that some of you feel the same. Brooke, thank you so much for jumping in here as well. And a few others, Luminous Pixel, I don't know your name, but I appreciate you jumping here and commenting along that your own struggle being, you mentioned that you're half Filipino, half Aussie. Yes, that sometimes we always go instead of processing how we feel, do self-care before really do a deeper reflection. Thank you so much for following along. And so I guess what is next? And in kind of talking about that, what have been the most meaningful and also genuine examples of allyship that you have experienced? And I think this also is a kind of a next step. So yeah, have you experienced any kind of great examples of allyship? What are some guidelines, or how can other communities help raise awareness?
Well, what I will say, I mean, that's complex, but one of the things I can say is that I've really appreciated everybody who has acknowledged this head on and not just pretended like it's not happening. So people who have taken the time to educate themselves on things, and people who have just like stopped and asked me if I'm okay. Because I don't really think on a daily basis that many people really ask me, or ask anybody really, like, how are you really?
Mm.
And I've had some older friends that, like at work or whatever, when they see me after Atlanta, I had a few of my older friends come up to me and just be like, I'm so sorry, and like give me a hug. And like that's been really helpful for me because it's just acknowledgement, really. And the taking the time to educate themselves, because I think thoughtfulness is a love language. And that for me has been the biggest thing. And I don't know how the rest of you guys feel about that, but I don't really necessarily have a clear-cut answer.
For sure. Karina, I know that you're building also a pretty big campaign. You have your t-shirt campaign that spreads awareness about some of these issues. What have you seen to be effective ways of building allyship, or how can others better amplify our voices and build that solidarity?
Yeah. So actually, after the Atlanta shooting, I felt again like so much emotion. At first, helpless, and then I was like, okay, I want to give back and help the community. So March 25th, this idea came to me to create a T-shirt campaign called Generate Love, and to donate all profits to help our Asian AAPI community. So got like several designers together. We've done this all pro bono, launched it in 3 weeks, barely slept, but I was like, this is so important. So we're donating all of our profits to Hollaback. They're a nonprofit, an amazing nonprofit in New York that does free bystander intervention trainings. And I think that's extremely important.
Yes.
It's a step that each person can do. You can sign up for this training, speak up, make sure someone else is okay. It could be a glance. It could be like some type of intervening safely, but that you're making a difference. And by doing this, and you can wear these like t-shirts. We have 10 different types of t-shirts, and we're donating all of our profits. So in 3 weeks, we've raised a little over 1,500 now. And so it's
Amazing.
It's been so mind-blowing, the support we're getting. And we're actually, Generate Love and Hollaback, we're speaking on ABC 7 News tomorrow at 3:20 p.m.
Whoa.
So it's just like, I'm so grateful that we're actually making a difference, helping people, and that no matter like what you do, what you think of, you can manifest anything. And I never knew that I'd be creating a t-shirt campaign or helping, but it came, and you can make it happen. So for any of you watching, I just encourage you to like really make it happen. If there's something you want to make, do it. You can totally do it. It could be small or big, and you're making a ripple effect.
That's awesome. And
Congrats.
Yeah, congrats on
Yeah.
the press coverage. We'll be looking for you on ABC 7. You said that's the channel. Okay, we'll tune in.
Thanks.
And by the way, I think right now is actually a good channel for the audience to start asking some questions. What are some questions on your mind? And Lauren is also doing a time check. I know that you have your dance practice, right? You mentioned. So I want to be respectful of your time. Just feel free to hop off if you need to hop off.
I'll hop off in 10 minutes. It'll give me 5 minutes to sign on. So I'm
okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would love to add to the question about what was the last question you asked about what people can do to be a better.
Yes.
Yeah. I would love to add to check your privilege.
Yes.
To check your privilege.
Yes.
Really. And if you don't know how, there's a lot of resources out there to help you check your privilege. But I think it needs to be said. It's not said enough. And even when you ask me, have I witnessed it? I really tried to think hard, and I don't feel like I completely have. As far as like some of the organizations that I'm a part of. as far as seeing something in the city that I live in. It's still very much not present. And so I would say check your privilege and to take time to really deeply listen to people. Like, don't come at us with an entire paragraph about how you're sorry about what happened. Come with a question of like, how are you sleeping? Can I do anything for you right now? Do you need support in this area? Because when we come at people with the question of how are you feeling, it places a lot of pressure on us to unpack that and then to try and articulate it in a way that's going to be in a package that you would understand versus something tangible. Can you be present for us? Can you speak on our behalf? Or can you support our businesses? Can you support Asian-owned businesses? Like, that goes a long way. When I look at a lot of the big companies that are killing it right now, still white-owned. So we need more support in that area as well.
For sure. Very well said. It's actually, and also just quickly jumping here, for those of you who are wondering a few things that you can do, definitely number one is acknowledge that if you're in the majority here, just check your privilege. And oftentimes, you know, we tend to give people a little bit too much credit or too much excuse for, oh, they don't know better. But the thing is, that's because of, you know, usually white privilege or some other kind of privilege that make you not notice, right, any things, or not be put in that position to bear that burden. So the first step is be aware that these things happen. It happens to a lot of us. I think each one of us has, we already have so many stories to share. I'm sure that everyone else in our community also has similar stories or traumatic events. And I would say, second of all, educate yourself. And I know that in some of the comments, some of you brought up really good points that, you know, it really comes down to education. And also starting from a like younger level too. And because these things, you know, kids learn from parents, right? They also sometimes would not know any better to, you know, not what to say, but at the same time, they're also not aware, oftentimes because the parents don't talk to them about these issues. So definitely educate yourself. Learn about the history, I would say, first and foremost, of, for example, like when did the first, you know, Asian population migrated, right, to the US? And then, I mean, we really can go back quite a couple hundred or few hundred years where, for example, the Chinese immigrants helped build the train lines that really propelled US to this kind of economic status. Of course, you know, the most notorious ones are with the Japanese intern camp during the World War II. So there's a lot of things. And of course, Chinese immigrants were also banned explicitly from entering the US, right? So like there's a lot of these historical lessons that we don't learn in classrooms. A lot of these things are glossed over or not even talked about. So definitely like go back and then read about some of the history, some of the past extremely explicit discrimination. And I think that once you learn and educate yourself on that, then the third one would be action, whether it's to support AAPI-owned businesses, which is probably the most direct ones. You know, literally put the money where your mouth is, right? Like instead of going on, I don't know, I'm hating on Amazon, but instead of, for example, putting on Amazon, you can put in a local business owned by a Asian American or API community member, and just really kind of start the conversation that way. Okay, so yes, so Jess mentioned that there's an amazing PBS series about Asian American history. Which one is that, Jess? If you want to put that in the comments, that would be great. And then thank you for the recap, Luminous Pixel. Yes, check your privilege. Number one, be aware of what's happening, and third, educate yourself. Thank you. And okay, we have one question. Does this apply to Australia as well? being a predominantly white/Caucasian country, possibly even more than America, where there are way more Asian communities? Really, really good question. Yeah, whoever, I don't know, anyone wants to jump in here, and Lauren, feel free to. I know that I'm constantly watching the time here, but who wants to jump in on that question?
I mean, I think it applies everywhere. I don't think this is just an American problem. We see a lot of violence in Australia, in the UK. I know a lot of my friends in Europe, even. It's a widespread phenomenon. And I agree. I mean, like in the comments say, it's like spreading awareness, educating yourself, and also just like taking a moment to understand that this is not a new issue. There has been a lot of violence towards Asian American communities in the past. And the biggest example that I can think of is Vincent Chin, who was a just such an attribute. And basically if you want to take the time, I don't want to like botch the story, but basically he was murdered because they believed that he was taking jobs away from the community because he had made an improvement on, I think it was like an automobile or something. But take the time to look that up and know that this isn't new. And yeah, that's...
Right. Yeah, they thought he was Japanese and he's Chinese. And so they killed him because they thought he was Japanese, taking away their jobs in the auto industry.
Wow. Thanks for jumping in here. And and Jess, thank you so much for dropping the link to pbs.org. And I would definitely look it up because I don't think I've heard about that one.
It's really good.
Okay, so Karina, you've watched it.
Yeah, I can send you that too.
Okay, awesome. And Brooke, so use your dollars wisely and support where you want growth and change. Really well said. And money in our case is the hardest currency, right? To really, really align your values. And thanks for the feedback. Let's say, Dr. I don't know if I'm butchering your name, Kartik Doshi. Get the local authorities involved in this. For example, spread awareness in the police department. So the more people they come in contact, they will help you spread it in an easier way, like a chain. Definitely, I think in this case, we'll need both kind of bottoms up and top down kind of approach, right? That it's not enough just to have grassroots movements, although we know that's a powerful force. But the authorities or the government needs to be really aware of that and really call out discriminations and injustice whenever we see it. And Luminous Pixel, when I visit America, there were way more Filipino communities and other languages and culture compared to Australia, so it may be worse here. Yeah, and thanks for following along, Luminous Pixel, and so cool to see that you tune in all the way from Australia.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's like early morning your time, so
you're a real one.
Yeah, you're early bird. Awesome. So I think that's all, and thank you. I know some of you mentioned that you followed the three panelists, so for sure, thank you for tuning in. And okay, we have a couple more comments, and then we'll wrap it up. Karma Pictures, my takeaways for action: don't let others define for how you should look and behave. Our culture is at a turning point to recognize the need to self-define. So well said. Speak up and ask, what do I need? That's so well said. Thank you so much for tuning in. And this has been super awesome conversation. And some of the topics are, I know, fairly personal and a little bit hard to talk about. So thank you, Lauren, Gwen, and Karina for joining in. And thank you to the audience for tuning in and leaving comments, being super engaged the whole way, asking questions. Super appreciate you. And so again, I'm the founder and CEO of StoreyLine, and we host other events on Instagram, talk about important issues, including empowerment or issues facing specific communities, sustainability, etc. So if you like this event, come check out our profile and follow our progress. So with that said, thank you so much for a wonderful session. I know I really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed as well. And hope that you also learned something from this talk from the three amazing panelists. So have a great rest of the night or evening or morning,
you,
wherever
Minette.
you are.
Thank you, Minette, for
Minette.
bringing us together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
And-
holding
of
space for
course.
this conversation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, have a good rest of the afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever
Everyone, take a deep breath in and out.
Love all
Yes.
of you. Thank
Shake
you.
it out.
So much
That
love
was
to
a
you.
lot. That was a lot.
you are. Yes.
And we
Thank
are
you
here
so
as a
much.
community. So if you need anything,
Yes.
you know that we are here.
Yep. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please
Totally.
reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll have a good rest of the evening and see some of you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Queens. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.